And welcome to Thrift Shop Biography. This is the one about P.T. Barnum. Thank you for listening. Roll up to the P.T. Barnum.
Greatest podcast on earth.
The greatest podcast on earth.
Quite obviously, we're reading P.T. Barnum's autobiography. What a find. I couldn't believe my eyes when we found this one.
This is the oldest autobiography we've read, right?
Yeah.
Because this is beginning of the 1800s.
1810.
Yeah.
And oh my God, don't you know it? Because talk about, it was a different time. It was such a different time that some of this, we should warn in advance, is shocking, racist, animalist, whatever.
Oh, yeah,
it's like
the treatment of...
kind of traumatic. People and animals.
Well, exploitation.
Exploitation of people and animals is really hard to deal with. It's really hard to
it is. Well, you think about a lot of circuses and stuff was still mistreating animals until very recently.
Yeah. But and the people.
Oh yeah, luckily circuses gave up dealing with people a long time ago.
So it's just, if you're in any way sensitive to any of this, you can't listen to this because it was hard to read. Did you find we haven't talked about it yet?
No, I know.
Did you find it hard to read at times? You did.
Yeah, no, I did. I
was thinking about you when I was reading. I was thinking, you're going to be the same as me.
The mistreatment.
Well, we're really soft for animals. Never mind people.
Yeah.
And it's hard, isn't it?
And it's that thing, a lot of the people he dealt with are deemed as other. So I think you see them as less than.
Yes.
And so you treat them differently. And so it didn't seem like he was treating his fellow man.
No, exactly.
In a way, because he didn't
have
think
that concept.
of these people.
Almost half towards being animals. But the thing is, I wouldn't treat animals bad either.
No, I
wouldn't treat humans like that. And
I think the whole premise of this book is fundamentally against everything I kind of think I stand for. In a way. So it's difficult to read it. It's an interesting story.
And yet he thinks he's a Christian do-gooder. That's how he sees himself.
Oh yeah, of course, because we know by reading these books, we know that Christians are such good, upstanding, moral people, aren't they?
Yes, we do know that.
I think it doesn't surprise me in the slightest he's a Christian.
But it's just that the way he sees his life is not how we see it now.
No,
so
of course.
we just have to start by saying that.
Well, I mean, you only have to think about that his shows were the greatest shows on earth. They drew huge crowds. So generally, not just
nobody
what he was doing,
nobody
thought going and gawping at somebody.
And the rest of it.
Yeah.
All of it.
So what did you know about P.T. Barnum before you read this book?
Well, he's a legend of a proprietor of what I thought was circuses, and I know there was some sort of freak show aspect. And obviously there's a musical, The Greatest Showman, which I did watch, but I was on a plane, so it was a tiny screen, terrible sound, and I probably had a gin and tonic with some altitude mixed in. So I don't
you really enjoyed
remember it much. I mean, I've got this vague idea there's the bearded lady and a circus and freak show, but I didn't know a scratching surface of it.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like if you've seen The Greatest Showman, doesn't tell you a thing really, not really, about his real life and who he really was. Mm-hmm. How about you?
I have I know his name, obviously, and he's some kind of circus guy who did The Greatest Show on Earth.
Yeah.
I think maybe in the 1980s on a rainy bank holiday weekend, I watched a film where Tommy Steele played Tom Thumb.
Really? Oh.
I think, but maybe not.
It's very vague. I mean, to me, Barnum and Bailey is the big name.
Yeah.
And to my surprise, that came in right at the very last minute of his life.
Yeah.
So it's all a revelation.
Yeah. So, as you said, it started all the way back in 1910.
1810.
Oh, yes, 1810.
It's that long ago.
When little P.T. Barnum was born in Bethel in Connecticut.
Yeah.
PT, do you know what it stands for?
I don't actually.
Physical torture, which he inflicted on Phineas Taylor.
Oh, okay.
But he's just generally
didn't get around to looking that up.
Just noticed in the first page of the book.
No, totally didn't write that down or remember it. Phineas Taylor.
But he's known mononymically as Barnum, right?
Yeah, he is.
Yeah, so it doesn't matter what his name is.
It doesn't matter. I'd like to say that at some point fairly early on, he mentions that he kept a diary, and that explains the rest of the book because he is meticulous in keeping records. He's got records. He knows the exact date, like on the 6th of June this happened. He knows the exact money he spent and the exact money he recouped.
Yeah, and totally unnecessary to include all that information in your autobiography.
Yeah,
It got a bit like, oh God, all these facts and figures.
Yeah, except I loved it.
You did, but you loved the Alan Sugar one for that reason.
I don't know why, because
This is similar to Alan Sugar.
Oh my God, I'm glad you said that, because the whole time I'm thinking this is exactly like Alan Sugar. This man's got the same mentality as Alan Sugar, and all he has is the one put it all into electronics, all of his energy and efforts, but the same amount of energy and effort as this man put into travelling circuses and entertaining the masses. Just put it as much as you can out there and charge them as little as possible, because firstly, you'll rake it in that way, and secondly, everybody gets something. It's you could literally layer one life over the other, and they're really similar.
And they're both very good at self-promotion and advertising.
Really good at marketing.
Yeah.
It's amazing, isn't it?
But both quite overblown in their autobiographies and including way too much information.
They include all the facts because that's their same brain.
Yeah.
It makes sense that they both love the numbers and the dates and the facts.
They are the same men 2 centuries apart.
Yeah, and gone into different... I'm glad you thought. You couldn't escape that fact if you read this book.
By the way, listeners, if you haven't listened to it, we do have a podcast about Alan Sugar. Go listen to it. It's good. So as a kid, his family are farmers, right? But he almost says that he's too lazy to do the menial work on the farm.
Well, he's a brain.
Yeah.
Like Michelle Obama says about Barack, he's cerebral. I love that. So he's got a brain and he needs to use it. And he's really good at maths.
So when he gets to a working age of like 11 or 12 where you wouldn't get a part-time job, his dad wants him to work on the farm, but he's like, no, don't want to, I'm going off to work in a shop.
Yeah.
And he's already not necessarily dealing in money all the time. He'll let people swap stuff for stuff. So that young brain already knows the value of stuff and what can be swapped for this and always coming out on top.
Yeah. Or he's got wheeler-dealer stuff going on the side. So he gets all these bottles. He trades in something for a ton of bottles that nobody wants. And the shopkeeper says, well, how are we going to get rid of this, young lad? So he does a lottery and he sells tons of tickets to this lottery. You're going to win prizes. But the prizes are useless stuff. Everyone gets bottles and a bit of crap out of the back of the shop until he's got rid of everything. And people sort of think it's funny, this young lad's kind of duped them, but they don't care. That's
a running theme. Early on, especially, like sometimes blatantly ripping people off and being okay about it.
Yeah.
And saying to people, oh, it was a fair transaction. Actually, it kind of was.
And he's sort of entertaining people and he's brightening up their lives even then.
Yeah, he was just seeing everything was a business opportunity. Enterprising for sure.
And an entrepreneur. Yeah.
And then he went to New York quite young.
Yeah, it's amazing because it gives you this idea without it really describing it, because he doesn't realise we're way into 2024 now.
Yeah.
Reading this. But you get an idea of America when it was a very young country. And the fact that he went on a trip to drive cattle from Connecticut to New York City. Mm-hmm. That's amazing, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Imagine that now. They're on a horse and carriage driving cattle to New York City. Nuts. It's another time.
And even in the stores there, 200 years ago, you get stuff in New York that you can't get in Connecticut. So he was trading with the shop owners there. Yeah. Actually, what he did, he found, was it some delicious candy or something? Yeah. And then he realised too late that he spent all of his money on sweets.
But he spent his money on toys. Firstly, it was toys, and that'd be amazing to show all the kids back at home. Then he realised he wanted this more, so he traded the toys with the something at a slight loss, and then he traded that with the sweets.
Yeah.
And he ended up going home with nothing. Because he'd eat, but he had an adventure.
He even got to the point where he was like trading the handkerchief in his pockets. It's like literally anything had a currency value.
Because he got hooked on sweets.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
I know. I can relate to that. But he's well on the way already of just being a superb entrepreneur. Businessman.
Yeah, he gets titled Showman later because he's got away with the audience and the customers, but he's a businessman.
Yeah, and he's, at this stage in his life, he very much becomes a merchant, first of all, doesn't he? And he does have shops and he does do more lottery
Yeah.
doesn't
Yeah, he gets into the lottery business and cleans up.
Oh, again, now here again. You know, we were just talking about in our previous podcasts about the hypocrisy of the church.
Yeah.
One of the things that really got his lottery business going was selling lottery tickets on behalf of the church. So people would buy them from him because some of the money, I don't know how much, would go to the church. He was
Yeah.
obviously making a profit. Even though the church preached against gambling, they were happy to take the money, which were the proceeds
They're not
of the
seeing
gambling.
it as gambling. Wow. Which it totally is, you're right.
Totally is, yeah. But he really started making his first substantial money from running lotteries, right?
Yeah.
And I think he took them state to state as well, so he was really branching out.
And then he got enough money to open a fruit shop back in Bethel. Mm-hmm. So he wanted to be back in Bethel. He had his family there and everything. And his father had died when he was 15.
Oh, yeah.
Of fever. But he did go back and open a fruit shop and invested $120 in it. This is in 1928, so that's a lot of money back then.
1828.
Yes, 1828. So impossible to comprehend how long ago it was.
Yeah.
And it was a big risk. But he was selling fruit and also ale. And he made, on the first day, he made $63 profit.
Wow.
So half his money back on day one. But like you said, he was amazing at advertising as well. So the whole town knew it was a big event. Mm-hmm. So he was doing very well. Oh, he sold lottery tickets in his own shop as well.
Right.
And toys and fruit and ale. He's no fool.
And is it at this point one of his customers doesn't want to walk home in the rain, so he escorts her, and that's Charity Hallett, who ends up being his wife and the mother of his children.
Cherry. Oh, is Cherry short for charity? Cherry Hallett. It's a lovely name. Yeah, she's a tailor, and everyone's saying you should marry higher than that, and he didn't want to because he loved her. He knew her for 5 years before he married her. It does sound like he really loves her, and that was...
It does, but I tell you what, he doesn't really talk about her at all in this book.
He doesn't at all.
Yeah.
You don't get to know her, you know nothing about her. He often says that he needs money because his family were in ill health, or his wife was in ill health. He mentions ill health a lot, but he never ever goes further into that.
Right.
And she never accompanies him anywhere, which I'm putting down to ill health, whatever that may be.
Yeah, ill health.
Either that or he just didn't want his wife with him.
Yeah, I think he's, again, like Alan Sugar. I think he just had a wife because it's what you did.
Yeah.
Pop a couple
So
of kids out, and then you go off and you do what you want.
Well, that's
actually.
absolutely what he did, yeah.
Yeah.
So whether she was in ill health or not,
Yeah.
she had to stay and look after kids anyway.
Oh, one motivating factor, which we haven't said, when his dad died, he owed more on the farm than they actually had.
Oh, yeah.
So they completely went bankrupt, which meant at the age of 15, he had to earn the money to buy the shoes to wear to his dad's funeral.
Yeah.
So at the age of 16, he's literally starting with nothing.
Yeah.
His dad, the farmer, left him nothing.
Yeah.
So, then he starts doing the lotteries and the shops, and but that was a huge motivating factor.
True.
That he was left. Then they expected to get money from the farm, his family.
Right.
And then they were left with literally nothing.
He's 19 when he's making some money from the lottery, and he bought 3 acres and built a house. So that's quite a big deal. He's really got there at 19. And at that time, he says he wrote an article that wasn't published. So he bought the printing press. And so then he owned his own newspaper. He was really, really good at writing, wasn't he? He was a real writer. But yeah, then he started printing his own stories, and he had, in no time, 3 liable actions against him.
Yeah, he did successful libel actions against him. So he was fined, and he ended up spending 60 days in prison.
Yeah.
But he sees it as a positive because the circulation of his newspaper went through the roof.
Yeah.
Because it was publicity.
Yeah.
Like, there's no such thing as bad publicity.
Yeah.
So he learned really quickly that controversy is really good for marketing.
Yeah.
And that's something that he kind of kept with him throughout his career to advertise the shows and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if you were studying marketing, you probably need to read this book.
Oh, 100%.
Because I'm sure that he was probably one of the first people doing the stunts he was pulling.
Yeah, he knew how to grab the headlines
So
and cause a
inventive.
sensation.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. All right, so it's really bizarre. He moved the family to New York, and after a while of nothing happening, they opened a lodgings, and also he's clever enough to put a lot of stuff into his wife's name.
Right.
So later on, when he goes bankrupt, he hasn't lost everything. And he meets this woman in his travels called Joyce Heff. This is the sort of first time where it's awkward because he buys her.
Well, it's a business friend of his who suggests it, because this is how he gets into having a travelling sideshow, right?
Yeah.
yeah, it's so utterly...
It's bizarre to read, isn't it?
Yeah, I was really shocked that this is the nucleus of the big Barnum sideshow empire. He basically bought a slave.
Yeah, a black woman who was supposedly 161 years old, while a former slave. She is free. I don't know how it works.
She was supposedly the nanny to George
General
Washington.
Washington, yeah.
Yeah. And the whole premise, his friend said, I have this woman, Joyce Heth. She was the nanny of George Washington when he was a little boy. She's got all the stories about it.
Yeah.
She's 161. I kind of doubted why he would fall for this, because there's a whole thing about did he genuinely believe it or not. Back in 200 years ago, people didn't really know if people could live that long or not.
You didn't have the information.
Yeah.
And he says she was so old, she couldn't really move. Her legs, I don't think her legs worked, but she was really animated when she talked.
And she could sing. She sung all the ancient hymns as well, which kind of gave provenance to her being 161.
Yeah. Okay, she was incredibly old. Maybe her mother was the nurse to George Washington, and maybe she learned all the stories. She had it down anyway, so that he bought her and then exhibited her.
He had to get around buying her because slavery had already been outlawed in New York and a few surrounding states, so he rented her.
Right.
And that was the loophole, so he wasn't buying a slave, he was renting
Lord.
her. It's so dark to think about. The Greatest Showman film,
yeah,
which I don't know if you can remember all of it. Did they gloss over this part?
Right, they didn't touch on the half of this.
Yeah, I can't imagine, because that was...
They absolutely didn't, because it's so awkward today. A lot of stuff he did, they didn't touch on half of it.
Well, I
honestly.
don't think they should have done the film at all. I think if you're going to make a big glossy film with Hugh Jackman about the world's greatest showman, I kind of think that in 2023 you almost can't tell that story without saying it actually began with exploitation of a 100-year-old slave.
Ended. I mean, it never changed. Anyway, we'll just tell you the facts as he...
No, of course, but she was a big draw. It was a successful purchase.
Yeah.
People wanted to come and see this 161-year-old woman who had all the stories of George Washington as a little baby.
Yeah.
Again,
that was her act, and he looked after her right to her death. So, really looked after her.
He says he looked after her.
He does, but then, later on he talks about General Tom Thumb, and they were friends to his death. I think he really was a kind man.
Okay. What's interesting about Joyce Heth is, once the initial controversy was beginning to subside a bit, so loads of people came to see this 161-year-old woman.
Yeah, he really
then when
made some
that
money.
started to subside, he then announced that actually it was an automaton. And the voice was from a ventriloquist. And people were like, no, so they came to see it again.
Oh, yeah. When you say he announced, he put a story into the newspapers, not from himself.
Clever.
Yeah, like
clever.
Marketing, like, this is a lie. This is really not... So everyone's like, I must go and check it out. That's the sort of thing that we're talking about.
Amazing marketing idea. I think what's even more shocking about this is Joyce Heth. This poor woman was old. He could have just put her into retirement and gave her a nice life. He was exploiting her all the way through her old age. And then when she died, he performed an autopsy on her and sold tickets.
Oh, Christ.
So 1,000 people come to see this old woman get cut up. But he made loads of money.
Yeah.
So, and then that became... He invested it back into his travelling show.
Yeah.
The whole premise that this whole famous travelling show is built on the exploitation and cutting up of an old black woman. It's just so...
God, it's... Yeah.
It almost... it's hard to believe.
And I feel this way about pretty much his whole life. I'm like, wow, that's so interesting. God, that's so awful. Oh, my God, did that really happen? How could people think that... Oh, bloody hell. That's how I took this entire book. I'm so glad I know these facts. It's nuts, but this is what was happening in these times, and so these are the facts.
But do you think if the Greatest Showman film started with Hugh Jackman cutting up a 100-year-old
do you know what I
lady?
mean? That's what I mean. That film is
it's sanitized.
It's not
rubbish,
this man's real life at all.
Then they shouldn't have done it about him. They should have done it about a general showman.
Yeah, that's true.
Because they've really glossed over a lot.
Yeah, they massively.
Yeah, which is bad, really. Like Hugh Jackman should do his due diligence and dig deeper and find out whether he wants to play somebody like that, rather than making him a big American hero.
They're making it a piece of entertainment. They're selling a lie, just like Barnum did. I mean, in this modern age, they're selling a lie by missing out tons of stuff. But the amazing thing about reading this book is that it's historically fascinating to actually know that all this stuff happened. And it's not like this was just one man's life. It's the whole world knew that this was happening because...
Oh, and they would pay to come and see it.
Yeah,
They
and with all the marketing, the whole of Europe, the travels, everybody knew all about all of this stuff. This stuff filtered into every person's imagination.
Yeah.
It's a huge part of this era. And it's really interesting to know about it, even though it's hard to, digest
I think that it's such a basic human response, like curiosity and things that are different to you, abnormalities, for want of a better word. Even though we don't have shows like this anymore, I think that basic need is still fulfilled through things like reality TV and people on TikTok who are basically blatantly mentally ill and should be nowhere near a camera.
Oh, it's that same voyeurism of freak shows.
Yeah, it's just a curiosity of us all wanting to see somebody who's a bit crazy.
And a lot of this, when he gets more into animals and stuff, is literally that people can't travel, they haven't travelled, they're never going to see an elephant, never going to see a giraffe. It's as much as seeing an alien to them at that point. There's no
it would blow your mind.
It'd absolutely blow your mind. So he is sharing the world with people. It's a giant Google search and he's bringing it to the masses.
Yeah, like a living encyclopedia.
Yeah, it is.
I do think that his intentions were honest in a way. I don't think he considered himself to be this terrible exploitative...
Oh no, that's us in this modern age looking on this with different eyes and more knowledge.
And again, and it's like, it's like people going to zoos now. We have zoos now which purport to be looking after the animals and breeding them in captivity, but really that animal should be in the wild.
Yeah, this has really made me think about all of that. We haven't got to animals yet. We need to move on.
Yeah. So what's he done? He's cut up a black lady.
Oh Christ! He took her on tour actually, and then he added a second act, which was an Italian who did all balancing, juggling, and was really good. And then somebody in the audience went, "That's rubbish. I could do that better." So he said, "Let's have a. You think you can do it better? Let's have a duel."
Yeah. And didn't the guy who challenged him then kind of come in cahoots with him, and it was all completely staged and promoted?
Absolutely.
Amazing. And another marketing genius.
Yeah, he's a genius. Okay, he was trying to find partners for his business, and people kept diddling him.
Oh, they didn't diddle him as well.
Diddled him all the time. It's so Alan Sugar.
Stiffed and
diddled him. Yeah, they put money in, he'd put his money in, and then they'd run off with him.
It happened to him a lot.
It did.
But I think that just makes me think he was literally doing so many business
That's exactly right.
deals and transactions. Law of averages, some people are going to stiff and diddle him.
They are.
Maybe that is a key to success. Like most business people would probably be risk averse and do like one or two safe bets. Whereas Barnum and Alan Sugar literally did so many business deals that they did get stiffed and diddled on some of them, but you have to do that many to get the really successful ones.
That's right.
So a part of business is getting stiffed and diddled.
It is. It obviously is. As long as you've got enough going on that you can clean up over there and lose some over there. Mm-hmm. So then he bought the American Museum. I wrote down the list of attractions that he got going in the American Museum because it's astounding. Because I actually think it's important because, like you say, in The Greatest Showman, they don't show it like it really is.
Yeah.
But this is actually the sort of things were there. Educated dogs, industrious fleas.
I love industrious fleas.
Automatons, jugglers, ventriloquists, living statuary, tableau, gypsies, albinos.
Gypsies?
Fat boys. Giants, dwarfs, rope dancers, live Yankees, pantomime, instrumental music, singing and dancing, dioramas, panoramas, models of Niagara, Dublin, Paris and Jerusalem, dioramas of fairy grottos, storms at sea, the creation, the first English Punch and Judy in America, mechanical figures, fancy glassblowing, knitting machines and other triumphs in the mechanical arts, dissolving views, American Indians who enacted their warlike and religious ceremonies on the stage, also a questionable dead mermaid, gorillas, grizzly bears, orangutans, great serpents.
Sounds like a fun day out.
What the? Isn't that nuts?
Yeah, God, there's so much exploitation going on there as well.
Yes, because he throws in humans amongst the...
Yeah. Automatons, jugglers, American Indians.
Yeah, and fat boys, albinos. Like, who agrees to do this stuff? I guess it's a living. It's a living if you were poor.
Yeah, you know what as well, if you are, I mean, they used to call them freaks. If you're a freak, you probably can't do much else. You know, if you're massively fat or you're a giantess or
Well,
you're
it's
a
like,
Siamese twin.
If you're absolutely beautiful, you can model. It's sort of weirdly similar.
The mermaid, the questionable mermaid. The Fiji mermaid, which is famous.
He knew straight away that it was a good taxidermy job.
But
he
it
said
really
that
held up to
really
scrutiny.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah, to the point. So the Fiji mermaid is dead. It's just a thing, a found thing. The top half is a monkey and the bottom half is a fish.
Yeah, both taxidermied and basically very carefully sewn together.
They said it must have taken so much patience because you could not detect the join. So that was one of the main things that ended up on the poster. Come and see the Fiji mermaid, because of course it was so unusual. Of course that's going to bring people out. Mm-hmm. Oh, humbug. That's a word that comes up a lot. And actually, humbug was attributed to him after he cut up Joyce Heth, and it was determined she wasn't actually 161.
Yeah.
And then they kind of started saying to him, oh, come on, nobody's 161. And the term humbug was first coined in the newspaper as a result of Joyce Heth. Now, he didn't take that as a negative thing.
Yeah.
He kind of spun that and said, yeah, it's humbug. It's fun. It's just... And he said with the mermaid, even though it was just so realistic and lots of people did come and believe it, but when people started saying humbug, he said it's fine to have humbugs if it brings the people in, but then you have to still entertain the people with 100 other things. You still have to give them a good day out.
That genuinely worked. It does sound like he amazingly entertained people.
Yeah, so he would
change their lives.
Yeah, so he would promote the show. This is another marketing thing. Promote it with a mermaid, which of course can't be true, but so everybody comes to see the mermaid and they get there and it's a lot smaller than they think and it's dead and they kind of think, oh, okay, this is a mermaid, but it doesn't matter at that point because everything else is there, which is going to blow your mind. So people go away satisfied.
Thousands of people saw these things every single day. And I bet it gets to the point where you have to say, yes, I've seen it. Have you seen it?
Yeah. And you think about it as well, back then, what would be your form of entertainment? Playing the piano in your house from sheet music or a newspaper.
And here's the key thing, is that he only charged 25 cents to get in, which was completely affordable to everybody. And it seems like he kept that price for decades, actually. So it's the masses he's entertaining.
And he really made the money, because at this point already, it is costing a lot of money to put this on.
Yeah.
So he's getting all that back and then a huge fortune on top.
Massive profit, yeah. Huge. I've got to mention this. He had Indians, I'll put it in a hyphen thing because they're actually natives from the land that got robbed from them. And they were living upstairs in the museum. And he had them on exhibition and told them that they were being honourably visited by people who wanted to meet them because they were in awe of them, because these were Indian chiefs. And they said it was his mission to make sure they never found out that people were paying, because that would be dishonourable. And he called them savages. God, you can't call them savages because we came from Europe and raped and pillaged and murdered across that land of those native people. We did that. We're savages.
Yeah.
Those are the honourable original inhabitants of this land. And, you know, it's just part of me that goes, why can't you see that?
Yeah.
Why do you think they're savages? And he's saying, because they don't understand English, in the show, he's introducing them, speaking really nicely, saying, oh, yes, this lovely man here, he's actually murdered quite a lot of white people. I'm talking to you like this in this tone because he thinks I'm bigging him up. But actually, I'm telling you that this is a savage man. And if he thought I was saying anything bad, he'd probably kill me, but he doesn't understand. Yeah. And you're like, God, this is...
They ended up putting a barrier between the Native Americans and the audience because I think he was quite unsure that if any time things got figured out, that they would just kill the audience.
Scalp
is that
everybody.
right?
Yeah, it's like, just because you scalped everybody, you shot everybody.
Yeah.
Which is more savage? Good Lord.
Oh my God.
Anyway,
it's so...
it's just, speaking from 2024, it's like, oh my God.
It's just exploitative through and through.
Yes.
But apart from maybe the jugglers and the automatons and
yeah,
stuff.
there's actually quite a lot of people who make a decent living. And later on he talks about, like some fires burned down this museum. multiple fires. Now, I've said it now, I might as well say it. I think he loses the whole museum 3 times
It's
to
5
fire.
times, I think.
5?
Yeah. Which maybe the first time it sounded like it was an arson job because somebody was against him politically. But then I kind of thought, is this just a big insurance job?
No way it isn't.
Oh, well, then
Absolutely not, because he actually puts the facts and figures in. He never got a fraction of what it was worth from the insurance. He actually says, I've got 30 grand for $500,000.
It's very unlucky to have that many fires. And do you know what? The animals were dying in the fires
God, I don't
as
even
well.
want to... But it's very much of the time, because one of them, it said it was a worker's pipe that could have been smouldering for ages, but he'd asked the workers all not to smoke, but they did. And the second time it was a boiler, because of course they had to heat the place, and it was the old days when nothing was very safe. Yeah. And there's fire in everything, fire to heat, fire to light, gas. Of course, there were fires a lot more in those days. A lot of people were genuinely making a living, because when these fires raged, he says, I've got 200 staff that need work. There's horses and riders, and then he'd say they lost their costumes in the fire, which only people who understand theatre will know how bad that was, that they lost their costumes. And I'm like, yeah, I really get that. And if they want to put another show on within 3 months, that's a huge thing just to do that. So those were actual people who were within this, like it says, pantomime. There's shows. There's a lot of actual shows and jugglers and horse riders and acrobats, and those are just people.
It's the greatest show on earth.
Living. Well, it became it. Yeah. At this point, it's just a sort of
a museum.
A museum of oddities and interesting things.
And around this time,
1942,
somebody very important comes into his life. A little man by the name of Charles Stratton, more popularly known as
General Tom Thumb.
General Tom Thumb. I was surprised at this. He was 4 years old.
And he was 2 foot tall.
Yeah, but I didn't realise. I assumed that he came on as an adult. But he was a toddler. But they told everyone he was 11.
Yeah.
So that was
because it made it seem more amazing that he was so small when he was 11.
Yeah.
But actually he was very young. But I bet he was really cute when he spoke, because one of the reasons people were so entranced by him is he just had this really honest way of talking. Like kids do. They just say the truth. They're not tiptoeing around the Queen Victoria. They just say the truth, and it was really endearing. That's because he was only 5. Yeah. He's literally talking as a kid.
He does sound like he was a very switched-on 5-year-old.
Oh, absolutely.
And they could teach him stuff and he would pick it up really quickly.
Yeah, he was obviously a really amazing person.
Yeah. And he stayed with Barnum for a long time, but he was a big draw.
Yeah, and in 1942 he got $25 a week and board, and his parents travelled with him and a tutor. So, he was doing
the whole premise,
it right.
What's a draw? That he's short.
Yeah, he's a small person. But the first part is that he's a small person. The second part is that he was a really endearing character and a really interesting person to talk to.
Did he sing and dance?
Oh, and they put him in a general's outfit.
Yeah.
And later on, not later on, that year I think, they toured him to Britain. They bought him a mini horse and carriage.
Oh, yeah, there's a picture of it in the book.
Yeah, cool, that was a spectacle.
And then Queen Victoria requested an audience with him.
Yeah.
So they took him to Buckingham Palace twice. And once they had the royal seal of approval, boom.
Oh, yeah.
That really took the whole thing to the next level.
Gifts.
Yeah.
And then it's good because as soon as they gave him royal gifts, they displayed those royal gifts as part of the exhibition.
Okay. And then because Queen Victoria saw him...
See, I'm saying exhibition about a person. It is nuts.
Yeah, it is.
But I guess it's a one-man show is another way of looking at it. But then why didn't I say that about the woman? What's the difference?
So are you saying that Tom Thumb is being exploited in the way that Joyce Heth was?
That's the point, I guess. If Joyce Heth actually wanted to do that show, I guess I feel more comfortable about it because I know that he had a really amazing life.
Yeah.
Through this job, he was massively famous. He got to travel all over Europe, and even when he married another small person who was a legend as well, in her own right. Mm-hmm. And they travelled all over Europe together, just the two of them, did their own show. They were wealthy. They really lived the life. And he was really looked after. And they remained friends, Barnum and him, for his entire life. Really good friends. Whenever they needed each other. They were there for each other. Mm-hmm. So I guess that makes you more comfortable about the whole thing.
Yeah.
It's complicated.
But after his European tour and seeing Queen Victoria and that led to him being seen by the emperors in Russia and French nobility and stuff. By the time then they returned to America, well, that was like a massive seal of approval. They were bigger than ever at this point.
He gets back to America, installs Tom Thumb in his museum, is making a total mint at that point, enough to buy land and build a palatial house in Bridgeport, Connecticut. This is where he settles. Yeah, so Jenny Lind comes in.
Who is the Swedish Nightingale.
Yeah.
Who is an amazing operatic soprano.
Yeah, a massive star. And he actually says, because he brought her over to America, he'd heard her in Europe, and he actually says it's difficult to believe there was a time when Americans didn't know who she was, because she became so big.
Yeah.
Googled her to check, and she was the biggest star of the 19th century. Full stop.
Wow.
He brought her to America, and she toured for 93 shows and made a lot of money.
It shows that his power that he has. Even the announcement that she was coming over, 10,000 people went to the docks to greet her ship.
Yeah. He realised that people didn't know who she was.
Yeah.
So if he was going to put her on it, can't he already put her on it first?
I was thinking about it, how in 1850 nobody had a radio. Most of those people probably hadn't even heard an opera voice.
Yeah. It says, actually, when I Googled her, that no recording exists of her. They made one recording by Edison, and that's long gone.
So hearing that for the first time, a woman soprano singing that would have been otherworldly.
Yeah.
You know, and he brought that over to America, hugely successful, to the point where they'd sell out a ticket so quickly that he began to auction them.
Yeah.
And he was getting like $200 per ticket. I mean, that was a huge amount of money.
Every single thing he does, whether it's his show, his museum, or this tour, or anything he does, he's always saying we turned thousands of people away.
Yeah.
And even when he says we expanded it 3 times the size and everyone thought it would break me, 4 times or 5 times the people came. He could do no wrong.
And he was paying Jenny Lind in 1850, he was paying her $1,000 per show.
Yeah.
Which shows you the amount of money he's making. I mean, $1,000 back then would have been a huge amount of money. They stayed in touch for the rest of her life, his life, actually. Yeah. So, it does go to, like you say, as much as he was exploiting Native Americans and old black ladies and stuff, actually, Tom Thumb, Jenny Lind, a lot of the people remained his friend long after they stopped working together. So
he tried to treat people well. I think he probably did treat people well. It's just that looking back from now, a lot of it's
actually thinking about that. If somebody was giving me £1,000 a show, I'd be their friend for the rest of my life. I think if you're the main drawer and you're getting the pay packet, it's easier to not feel exploited.
Yeah, that's true. So anyway, while he's on tour, and this hurts me, it's 1849, and he sends associates to Ceylon to get 12 elephants and other wild animals for his travelling circus. That's when he first gets into animals. It's just hard to read about. They came back with 13 elephants and a baby, but they'd killed many more. It's just awful. At the cost of $109,000 it cost. Those people were away for a year trying to get all these wild animals.
Wow.
And then you're shipping them back. And then he put some elephants to work ploughing a farm that was right near the railroad so that it would just get a lot of publicity.
Right.
So everyone saw these
Everybody
elephants.
saw them.
No, it's true. Even when I saw an elephant for the first time in my life, it absolutely blew my mind. And that's many decades later.
Yeah.
Here's another classic Alan Sugar.
Yeah. Oh.
He bought 15 buffalo. And he hired a lasso man. And then he put on a show, but in an island across from New York. He put on a free show and advertised it. Free show. Lasso man shows how to capture buffalo. Thousands of people came over to see this free show. Where's he making his profit? He's bought up all the ferries for the day. And he makes his mint. He makes $3,500 just from ferry tickets.
Wow.
Thousands of ferry tickets. People coming and going all day because they had shows all day. And all the refreshments he put on.
Amazing.
So it looks like a free show.
Yeah.
It's brilliant. But it's a completely crap show because the buffalo will run and hide.
Yeah.
And everyone goes back and we've been humbugged. They still had a great day.
Oh, they said that one of the ferries going back crossed a ferry of people coming forward. And the people on the ferry going back were saying, don't bother, it's a humbug.
Yeah.
And that made the people on the ferry going over more excited because they couldn't wait to see what the humbug
and then
was.
talk about this stupid humbug show that duped everybody. And they couldn't lose. But it's like, what else were they going to do that day? It was cheap.
It's fun. It's just fun.
It's
at the
actually
expense
fun.
of a herd of buffalo.
Yeah, I know.
It's good old-fashioned
Poor
fun.
buffalo. But then at that time, they didn't care about... It's just cows. I mean, a lot of people eat burgers to this day.
Yeah, they do.
They don't care about killing cows. It's
No.
only you and I who are soft for animals.
I know.
Not only, there's a lot of vegetarians out there.
Yeah.
But a lot of people, they don't care about cattle. So he gets another plan. I'm going to create a city. So it's East Bridgeport, where he lives. He buys tons of acres and he starts mapping out a whole town and selling the plots for people to build on. Mm-hmm. And then he knows that he's got to also bring some industry to this town. There's a factory called Jerome Clock Company who have got like 1,500 employees. And they say they'd like to relocate to this place. I'm a little bit confused by the facts of how this all happened. But somehow he got caught up in contracts with them to relocate, and then they completely stiffed and diddled him.
Yeah.
Totally and utterly screwed him over. And they went bankrupt. They never relocated.
They never came.
And he ended up taking on all their debts, which were absolutely huge. And this is what brought him completely down. Mm-hmm. He became massively in debt. And yeah, he was done for. He lost everything. He lost his house. You know, they took everything he owned. The only stuff they didn't take was stuff that it was in his wife's name. Because he was done for, it actually caused a whole new side of his life to come about, which is the lectures that he did.
The temperance lectures about anti-alcohol and stuff.
Yeah, well, he was doing them alongside the other stuff the whole time.
That's interesting to me. So the whole time that he's got all of these sideshows and interesting things to come and watch and models of the Niagara Falls, also he was doing lectures about the evils of alcohol and stuff, right?
Temperance lectures, which was a real movement in those days, wasn't it?
Yeah. It surprised me to know that was existing alongside all of the entertainment.
Yeah, well, it said that wherever he went on tour with whoever it was, whether it was Tom Thurm or Jenny Lind, wherever he went, he booked himself to do a lecture for nothing at his own expense.
Really?
Because he really believed in trying to help people. He said when he went to Europe, all the aristocracy was so pissed.
Right. Yeah.
And he thought, bloody hell, I don't want that ever to happen to me. And he saw the evils of it, mostly among the aristocracy. But it's weird because I was in a pub in Britain last year, and it said it was an old temperance hall because they always took over amazing. And it was a beautiful building. And I thought, I'm sat here doing nothing, so I'll Google temperance hall. And I learned about the whole movement.
Oh, wow.
Which so they actually built these halls to lecture on temperance. It wasn't religious.
No one's a pub.
Now one's a pub. It's so ironic, isn't it?
Yeah.
It was a pool hall, though. It provided entertainment. It didn't just lecture. It provided entertainment without alcohol for younger people, so that people, or working men or whatever, so they didn't just drink. I kind of think it's really good, actually.
Yeah, could do with a few now.
Could actually.
Yeah.
Because the whole society can get ruined by alcohol if you're not careful.
Yeah. Certainly the Brits. We have such a terrible reputation for being drunkards.
Yeah, I know.
To the point where, do you know now that Amsterdam, the Netherlands, actually have on their tourism websites, they say don't come if you Brits aren't welcome. If you're a group of like young men from Britain, don't come. It actually tells people
but it's not going to stop
come.
them. They need to actually turn away at the airport when they're hammered before they've even got there. Because they are a nuisance. They are.
We're awful.
Yeah, Brits abroad are very embarrassing.
Yeah.
So anyway, good on him for that. But when he was broke, he started doing a lecture circuit in Britain about Barnum, about his life.
Okay.
And it was ostensibly about business. Mm-hmm. He was just telling his whole life because his whole life's about business. It turned out that was extremely fascinating, and him just talking about his life was a big show, and he got paid well.
Well, like you said, this book is fascinating for anybody remotely interested in business.
Yeah, business and showbiz.
And opportunity, because do you know what? It wasn't until he didn't realise he was going to end up doing this until he was approached with Joyce Heth.
Yeah, that's true.
And then he put her on show and made a lot of money.
Yeah.
And then that turned into what we know Barnum for. So there's nobody better, in a way, to give a lecture about business and marketing.
Really true. And because he was a showman by then, because he'd done so much actual performing, he was probably really, really good at public speaking.
Yeah.
I imagine. So his debts are cleared. He buys back the museum in 1859. And Grizzly Adams comes to New York
I was
City.
shocked. I only know Grizzly Adams from the TV show in the 1970s.
I don't know how I know him. I just know the name.
Oh, yeah. So in the 1970s,
Yeah.
you know when we had Starsky and Hutch
Yeah.
and Hawaii Five-0, there used to be an American show called Grizzly Adams, which was a guy with a big bushy beard who lived in the wilderness with the animals. I had no idea
That it was a real person.
that it was based on a real person.
I didn't know anything. I didn't know what I knew about him.
I mean, when you dig into it, he's a terrible person because all he does is hunt and capture animals and stuff.
But he was also a bear handler. He was like the Grizzly Man, I guess, that film.
I was shocked. Barnum said that Grizzly Adams, half his head was bashed
Yeah,
in.
said he always wore a hat, and when he took his hat off, you could actually see some of his brain. Because he had a big hole in his head.
Because a bear had attacked him.
Yeah, he'd had so many attacks by bears, of course he had.
Yeah.
He said he absolutely had a rapport with them and he completely trained them, but every now and then one would just swipe at him and it'd do some damage.
Yeah.
So his visible brain meant that he was actually dying, and he was dying whilst Barnum knew him.
Yeah.
And he had months to live, but he had all this bravado. No, I'm going to be fine, and he clearly wasn't.
So he was became part of the show. Grizzly Adams would get on stage and
Brought all his bears.
Did
his show in the museum in New York.
Oh, those poor bears.
Oh, poor everybody,
Yeah.
people and animals, if you care.
We care. I care about Jumbo. We at Jumbo
Oh
yet?
no, it's heartbreaking. I can't stand it.
Should we not talk about Jumbo? Why don't you just go on to listeners? Go onto the internet and just Google Jumbo because we don't want to talk.
No,
about
I don't want to talk about any of this, but let's talk about it because he set up traps in Canada to catch whales.
A whale trap.
Oh yes,
That's
they
really
trapped.
ambitious. How do you trap a whale?
Oh God, it's like they got one, and he's like, no, I want another one, and that one swam out, but eventually got two whales.
They had to catch two, so they were But what do you bait a whale trap with?
It's nuts. I don't fully understand this, but it was like nothing was too difficult for Barnum.
Yeah.
He could achieve anything, and he'd learned that you could keep a whale alive just by dabbing water on their
Oh God, the
nozzle thing
blowhole.
and around the mouth. So they shipped these two whales to the museum. They died in 2 days. They put them in a tank. They died in 2 days, and I know it's awful. So then he's like, right, it's probably because we don't have the right water. So at massive expense, he managed to get water channeled from the Hudson, is it? Or the other side, which is more salt water, I guess.
Okay.
I don't know. Around New York somewhere, which is an island, they channeled water from some of it. Put thousands it would have cost, imagine, to his museum. And so then they get two more whales. They died in 2 days. Okay.
Oh, it's so
people
awful.
killed whales, and they still kill whales.
Well, we've learnt nothing. We have those shows in Florida. What are they called? SeaWorld.
Yeah.
Have you seen that documentary, Blackfish?
No.
Those big, they do not exist happily, obviously, in captivity.
Look, there's a lot of people to this day who literally shut down their brain and refuse to see animals as creatures on this earth that have brains, feelings. They just won't accept that animals have feelings. And this is not a lecture against non-vegetarians, except
let's make it a lecture against them. One thing I fully believe, in 100 years' time, society will look back and say the time that we, i.e. now that we inhabited the earth, what we did to animals in the mass market meat industry was inexplicably cruel, and they wouldn't believe that we all let that happen.
Yeah, I know. I hope
it's
that
barbaric.
I hope that happens.
Do you know what? One thing that absolutely blew my mind. Do you know there's a dating show on TV called First Dates where people have blind dates in restaurants? The first time they meet each other is at the table. And it was this man and this woman, early 20s, both nerdy, very shy, very cute. And then she was saying, oh, it's all about animals for me. They've saved my life. I've been through a lot, and my animals just have kept me company, and I put them above everything. I'm going to put them above any man I ever meet. And then the waiter comes over and says, what would you like? She goes, oh, I'll have the steak. And it's just like, what?
It's so true. You're like, oh, I'd die for my cat. I'll have a burger. It's exactly that. I know. Well, that's us, right? And we can't get too
that realizing that disconnect makes you realize how people can treat animals like this without a second thought.
That's absolutely right.
So if you eat meat, it's your fault.
Yeah. They got hippos, they got tropical fish. It was the first aquarium ever in the world ever. We went to Bermuda to get fish, tropical fish. Imagine how amazing it would be to see tropical fish in 1860. Amazing.
Yeah, you wouldn't
sharks.
believe they existed. I bet they thought that they were automatons or
incredible.
something. To believe that was actually... I still think that now when you watch David Attenborough and they send the cameras right to the depths of the ocean, you kind of think,
some of those...
it's an alien.
Okay, yeah, the world is full of the most incredible things, and he did bring them to the museum. Okay, it's going a bit far to try and bring whales, but... I get
I get why he's trying to do it. In a way, he is David Attenborough 100 years before.
Yeah.
David Attenborough can do it in a much more humane way because you go to the animal habitat with your cameras.
Yeah, exactly.
And you put them on our TV.
Bring us the information.
Yeah, but before you could do that, I guess the logical thing in their heads was to bring the animals to us.
And if you don't care if they die,
yeah.
then it's easy to do it without worrying too much. Because there's one point that they actually went on holiday. Oh my God, it was General Custer. He was a buffalo man. And at some point, him and his family went on holiday to where General Custer had all these buffaloes out in the wilderness of America. And they just had a big buffalo hunt. They killed 20 buffalo, and we could have killed so many more, other than at that point it seemed like barbaric butchery.
Wanton butchery, it's kind of,
You're like, oh, how come up to 20 it wasn't butchery?
Yes.
You're not going to eat them for dinner, are you? 20 buffalo? Beyond that would have been butchery.
Yeah, I thought that exactly when I read that.
Total sense. Anyway.
It's almost like butchery is okay, but wanton butchery.
Yeah. 20 is butchery, 21 is wanton. Anyway, so around this time, he'd had another fire in his bloody museum again. And whenever it is, the people get out, but the animals never do.
Perhaps the animals start the fires. They're rebelling.
Oh my God, there's a point later where he has a fire and one of the elephants just kills itself. It's definitely suicide. It keeps walking back into the fire and they drag it out and it keeps walking back in. It's actual suicide.
Don't, because I'm going to weep.
I know. That's how much they have brains.
Yeah.
That animal chose to die when it had its first opportunity.
It's really sad.
Yeah, that is. And the whole Jumbo thing. Can we skip over Jumbo quickly?
Do Jumbo.
The Jumbo story is heartbreaking. This elephant was raised in the zoo in Britain, in London. Jumbo.
Well, it was a huge draw in London because it was massive.
Yeah.
The word Jumbo came from Jumbo the elephant, which shows how popular he was.
Yeah, he was so big.
So anytime you say Jumbo, it's
Jumbo-sized.
When you go into McDonald's and say I'd like a Jumbo burger.
Is that
please.
A thing?
I don't know.
We don't know, do we? Yeah.
Jumbo.
Immensely famous elephant that
in
Queen
London
Victoria
Zoo.
had ridden on and when they were kids and all this.
Yeah, so everyone knew it. And then Barnum wanted to buy it.
Who also had a wife called Alice, because he buys Alice later.
The Jumbo has a wife called Alice. Sorry, I thought you...
A wife, but a partner.
Yeah,
an actual elephant partner.
Yeah.
Barnum wants to buy it because it'll be the most famous elephant ever.
The whole of London was up in arms because they didn't want to lose. The whole of Britain did not want to lose Jumbo.
No, because it was loved.
100,000 children wrote letters to Queen Victoria saying, please do not sell Jumbo to the Americans.
Yeah, which made it massively a big publicity stunt for him. So he offered £10,000, which of course London Zoo probably couldn't refuse because it would have kept them going for years.
They could have bought so many more animals
and
to
they
keep
could have looked after them. Oh, Christ. Yes. So they get Jumbo and... they really find it hard to physically remove it from the zoo because he doesn't want to go. And when they get him out of the zoo, he's wailing and crying and he sits in the road and will not be moved. Heartbreaking. And his partner Alice is wailing and doesn't want him to... I know, it's heartbreaking. Of course, it makes Barnum a mint because he's the most famous elephant in the world.
Yeah.
And they're transporting the show in a freight train, unexpected freight train. And then he gets killed on the railroad.
He's getting hit by a train.
Yeah, he's being transported because he's on tour. Anyway, it's difficult reading for sure.
Yeah, poor Jumbo.
Yeah, I think even meat eaters would be sad about this. And so what does he do? He buys the widow, Alice,
buys up
and takes
Alice,
her out.
The elephant widow, and exploits her. I bet when they went to get her, I bet she thought they were coming to take her to Jumbo.
Oh, God.
And then when she gets there, he's dead. Okay,
horrible.
that's the end of the podcast.
Yeah, let's
Just
just have a little break.
In the next 10
oh my
minutes.
God. Alice, Jumbo's widow, purchased and toured with stuffed Jumbo Because what do they do when Jumbo gets brutally murdered by a freight train? They have him taxidermied, and then she tours with her stuffed husband. But that's dark.
That's horrendous. Alice is an intelligent, sentient being.
Yes.
It's just, oh my God. Did she go insane?
Probably. Anyway, at this point, by the way, Barnum's wife's died and he's got a new wife. There you go.
Did he stuff her?
It's not half as tragic as this. Yeah, did he stuff her and tour his new wife with his stuffed ex-wife?
I mean, to be honest, wouldn't put it past him if
I
he
wouldn't
did.
put it past him.
Maybe he made her into a new mermaid, so did Monkey on her top half.
Yes. Anyway, some more tragic things happen with more animals and more fires. And anyway, he dies. And he's left 4 million.
That's wrapping it up really quickly. We're
really
over
is
it.
the end.
Yeah, but we're over it now because Jumbo's depressed us.
It really has. But no, in 1887, he joins forces with Bailey. And it becomes Barnum and Bailey. And he dies in 1891. So it really is the very last bit of his life. And that's so famous, isn't it, Barnum and Bailey? To me, that's more famous than Barnum on his own, which is weird. So anyway, I've become massively learned from this book. This book will not leave me. It's kind of amazing, the whole thing. It's no wonder we don't get taught about this sort of thing, because you think you might learn about this at school. It's because it's so awkward.
Yeah. No, it really is. But I think even like, can I remember going to a circus with lions and elephants?
Oh, I certainly did.
So that's in our lifetime.
Yeah.
So that's even...
And in Europe, they still have them.
Yeah, damn it.
Yeah.
I think now, do they still even have horses with acrobats performing on horses?
Yeah, I've seen
Why
that.
is it acceptable to train a horse and keep it in a
I think it's
circus?
Slightly more humane. A couple of years ago, there's one in Budapest that's got elephants in and stuff, but they live there. It doesn't tour.
Oh, okay.
You know, they've actually got an extensive space for them. If you're outside of the circus, you can see over the wall, you can see this elephant pottering about.
Okay.
Comes on, does a little bit in the show, and then lives there. I think the whole moving of the animals and touring.
But should there be an elephant living in Budapest?
I have
anyway?
no bloody idea.
I mean, where does it end?
I don't know.
You're either looking after and respecting these animals, or you're not.
No, I know.
But no, sorry. The thing was, is it still happening? Yes,
Yes, it is.
So we've learnt nothing.
We've learned a lot.
No, we've learned a lot. Yeah, we have. But also, I maintain that actually the freak show, as it were, still exists now.
It's online,
and because people still have an appetite for curiosity.
We're voyeurs. It's part of our nature.
We really are. And therefore it just won't end. It will always keep coming back in a different form,
because
right?
Humans are weird animals in themselves.
Yeah. So
Let's have a little
I've not seen the Greatest Showman film, but I can't imagine, because it was such a crowd pleaser. Nobody involved in the Greatest Showman
has read this book.
has read this book. They know nothing about him.
Yeah, it's a piece of entertainment that's completely separate from this. So if anybody's at all interested in a massively fascinating piece of history that is in no way represented in any musical,
let's face
read this book.
Yeah. So join us next week for more uplifting tales of showbiz and celebrity. What have we got next week? We've got Motley Crue, isn't it?
Oh, that's going to be bad. That's going to be more inhumane than Barnum.
Okay, see you next week.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Thrift Shop Biography. We love making this podcast and we're absolutely thrilled that so many of you are already listening. We're new to this and you could really help us out by leaving us a review somewhere, wherever you listen to this podcast. And if you could share us, tell your friends about us, or drop some links on social media. We have a Facebook page called Thrift Shop Biography, so make sure you come over there to hear about the episodes first and what else we're up to. Okay, see you next week. And if you're new here, there are loads more episodes now to go and listen in the back catalogue, so make sure you go and enjoy them. Okay, thank you very much.